Hey guys, it's Shadow the Rat, and in today's video I want to go over how much rats cost. Now before I begin, I do want to say that there is going to be quite a variation in how much you personally pay for your rats and their supplies, simply because there are a lot of variables that go into this. For example, where you get your supplies, and if you get it used, how many rats you're planning on getting, and so on. So to begin, I want to talk about the starting cost of getting rats. Now the largest cost that you're probably going to have when you first get rats is going to be their cage. And this is simply because rats require a large cage in order to get the necessary amount of enrichment. Now, a rat cage is probably going to cost anywhere from $70 to $300. For example, if you go on the lower end of the spectrum and you get something like a Petco Rat Manor, that can only house 2 to 3 rats and it's around $80. On the other end of the spectrum, you have something like a Double Critter Nation. These are around $250 new. They can go up to $300 new, and they can house up to 12 rats. So you can see there's a big difference here. Now, you really don't want to skimp on the cage, so if you plan on having more rats and you're just getting 2 to 3 right now, then it's a good idea to get a slightly larger cage, maybe something like a Single Critter Nation. That's still pretty expensive at around $120 to $140. However, you'll find that you can fit up to 6 rats in there. So yeah, it's definitely a good idea to invest in a bigger cage, a good quality cage, just because you'll find that it's going to save you money in the long run. If you go and you get one of these younger rat starter kit cages or whatever, sometimes they sell these small cages and they sell them as young rat cages, then you're probably just going to be wasting money, because a lot of these cages, which are just part of these starter kits, aren't really suitable in general. You'll find that younger rats are still super energetic. In fact, they're often more energetic than older rats, so there's no reason not to give them a larger cage right away. So anyways, yeah, I'd budget around $70 to $300 for a cage. You can also go ahead and try to find a used cage. For example, I got my Double Critter Nation for only $70 off Facebook. So it's a good idea to check Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, or whatever sort of online thrift shops you have in your area. The next thing that you want to look at is going to be the essentials, things like food, water bottles, and just other sorts of essential supplies. Now in terms of food, I use Oxbow rat food, and you can buy the 3-pound bags of Oxbow at PetSmart for around $16, and that's really expensive. It comes down to around $5.30 per pound of food. Now, if you go online and you search Oxbow 20-pound bags, you'll find that they sell 20-pound bags for only $40. So that means the pound per food for these bags is only $2. So you get a pound for $2 if you buy the $20 bags online, whereas if you're buying the $3 bags, you're paying $5.30 for each pound. So it's these sort of things that you want to look into, especially if you have more rats. When I had just 2 or 3 rats, I was buying the 3-pound bags because it wasn't too bad. Even though it was more expensive, it was more convenient to get it in store. However, now that I have 6 rats, it's really much more expensive in terms of their food consumption. So I just go ahead and order in bulk online, and that definitely saves me quite a bit of money. Now in terms of water bottles, I always suggest having at least 2 in the cage, and same with food dishes unless you're not using one. Some people do scatter feed, which is perfectly fine, but if you're using a water bottle, I definitely suggest having at least 2, just because water bottles are known for breaking down once in a while, and rats are pretty susceptible to dehydration. You don't want them to go without water, and I find that water bottles tend to be around $2 to $10. The ones I use are, I think, $6.99, so not too bad. And personally, I don't feel comfortable getting water bottles used, so that's something I would definitely get in store. In terms of food bowls, if you do want to use food bowls, you can just use any dish really. You can go to the store and buy something specifically for rats. However, I find this isn't necessary. I mean, I have these little ceramic dishes I use for my rats' food, and these actually just came with some desserts that I bought from a local bakery. Now, the next thing you want to look into are toys and hides. And in terms of expenses here, I would budget around $30 to $50. Now, you have a lot more leeway when it comes to toys and stuff like this, simply because a lot of rat toys can just be made from anything you have around the house. For example, if you have a box, you can just cut a hole in it, put it in the rat cage, and they will love it. You can also find cheap rat toys at thrift stores and places like that. I found lots of cool stuff at my local thrift store. For example, at Goodwill, I got this U-shaped sink organizer that's like $50 new, and I got it for only $5, and the rats absolutely love it. I almost always have it in their cage because it's just such a perfect climbing opportunity for them. So yeah, it's definitely worth going to your local thrift store and just checking out what they have. Of course, you can also go to pet stores and buy stuff online off like Amazon or Chewy. For stuff to buy here, I would suggest things like space pods or just in general plastic toys or metal toys, because these things are going to last longer, they're going to be easier to clean, and unlike wood or cardboard things, you're not going to be throwing them out as soon as they get dirty. So yeah, toys are definitely one of the things you can really save on. Anything from a scrap of fabric making a hammock to a cardboard box making a hide, all of these things can work with rats, and they really don't know the difference between a DIY toy that cost you nothing and a pet store toy that cost you 20 bucks. So next I want to go over bedding. Now, depending on what you want to use in your cage, I know some people will use fleece, and I personally use loose bedding. You're going to be paying different amounts. I'm just going to talk about bedding because that is my experience. I get 30 pounds for $20, and this lasts for around 2 cage cleanings. I clean the cage fully every 2 weeks. However, if you want to go even cheaper, you can often find even larger bags of bedding at your local Tractor Supply stores. I know some people get like Aspen at their local Tractor Supply stores for like $5, and it's a huge bag that can last for multiple cage cleanings, so it's definitely worth checking out if you're looking for a cheaper source of bedding. Now, the next thing I want to go over is honestly one of the most important things, and that is a vet fund. Now, I know a lot of people get rats because they are a fairly inexpensive pet, at least when you compare them to cats or dogs. However, you do need to remember that rats are living creatures and they are fairly prone to several medical issues, for example, tumors and respiratory issues. And a lot of these issues are time sensitive. Because rats are prey animals, they tend to hide illness until they just can't. And this means by the time they're showing their illness, that means they're really ill and they need treatment right away. So you really want to know a vet, and you want to have a good vet fund in place so that you're actually able to pay for bringing the rat to the vet right away. Now, I see this a lot with rats because they're smaller pets. People don't think about bringing them to the vet. They think, oh, I can just cross that bridge when I come to it. It's just going to be 20 bucks. It's not. It's going to be way more expensive than that. I would recommend having at least $100 to $200 set aside for just 2 to 3 rats. If you have more rats, you're going to need more money set aside, obviously. You just don't want to be put in a situation where you just can't pay to take your rat to the vet. And finally, the last thing you really need to think about is how much your rats are going to cost themselves. So I found rat costs can really vary. It can be anywhere from $1 to $50 or even more per rat. And this is going to depend a lot on where you get them. For example, my feeder girls were around $3 each, but my rats from PetSmart were $15 each, and it's just because they charge different prices. These rats are no different in terms of genetics or temperament and health and stuff like that. If you get your rats from a breeder, however, especially an ethical breeder, you'll find that they usually charge more. I'd say around $20 to $50 is more common when you're going for a breeder rat. And the thing with breeder rats is not only do they tend to have a better temperament, but you'll find that in general their health tends to be better, and oftentimes breeders will even pay for any health expenses for the first 2 weeks with you. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind when you look at these higher prices for rats. They might be higher priced, but that might be because they're better quality in terms of assured temperament, assured health, and so on. Okay, so that's pretty much all you have to think about when it comes to starting costs for rats. When it comes to monthly costs, the only real things you need to think about are food and bedding. I find that things like toys and such, I don't really buy those as much as make them. I do make a lot of my toys. A lot of them are DIY. Now, in terms of food, I find that rats eat around a pound of their lab block per month. So in my case, that would be 6 pounds a month. And if I'm getting something like the 3-pound food, that means around $30 a month. However, now that I'm getting the 20-pound food, that means I'm only paying around $12 a month. So yeah, again, you can see big difference, $12 to $30. There's a sizable gap in between there. So the other thing I have to think about is bedding, and I pay around $20 for a 30-pound bag of yesterday's news, like I said. And since this lasts for around 2 cleanings and I do 2 full cleanings a month, that means that $20 is about how much I pay for bedding a month. So in general, I'm paying around $32 a month, and you know, that's not actually too much when you consider that I have 6 rats. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to post them down below. Other than that, if you'd like, you can check out my rat website at www.rattricks.weebly.com, link in the description. I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!